Welcome into the Sports Memo podcast for October 16th, Tuesday. This is our first NHL podcast here on Sports Memo, and we're bringing in our NHL handicapper, Andrew McInnis. Without further ado, McInnis, welcome to the pod. How are you, bud?
Doing great, Drew. It's great to be back, and the NHL is fully rolling right now. Like I've been mentioning the past couple of weeks on various outlets, we've seen some teams here, Drew, that are surprising us. Some teams that were favorites that are doing really well so far. But the biggest talk right now is the totals, Drew. I mean, there's been goals and goals and goals this season so far. So interested to talk about that as the season progresses. But as for now, let's get this podcast rolling.
Yeah, excited to have you on and talk NHL. You know, it's a great sport to watch and a great sport to bet, especially if you can win, which you have 36, 21, and 2 on the season year to date in NHL. That's 63%. So congrats to you, McInnis. And we got a couple games here and a couple questions for you, just overall handicapping the NHL questions for you. But we'll start off here, just the second game on the rotation number, 3 and 4, Florida Panthers at the Philadelphia Flyers. Looks like the Panthers minus 106 or minus 110 the other way. So this is kind of like a flip favorite, some opinion either way as far as which team is favored. Pretty much a pick 'em, with 6 being the total. McInnis, how would you look to bet the Panthers and Flyers here tonight?
This one's an interesting game here, Drew, because both teams are relatively banged up, relatively injured. And again, we are very early on in this season. But looking at this Florida Panthers team, they're expected to be at least a contender to be a playoff team this year. But an 0-2-1 start for them so far. They have not been able to produce much offense, and they've looked very weak defensively in my eyes. Whereas this Philadelphia Flyers team is kind of like in the different boat where they're a team that can put out these numbers on a week-to-week, on a day-to-day basis, but their goaltending and their defense has been an issue for them as the season really has gone on so far. But looking at the head-to-head, I mean, Philly averaging 3.2 goals per game, Florida just 2.3, and they're a team where these injuries are really affecting them. So as far as Philadelphia goes, they got a couple guys out right now, like Nolan Patrick, a guy in his sophomore season that they could really have right now on that third line center position. They could really use him out there. But as far as these two teams, the comparison goes, I think that Philadelphia is far faster, has far more skill, and they're a team that's going to put a lot more pressure on you. They're a team that likes to fire a lot of shots on net, whether it be quality or not. They like to get that stat up very, very, very high. Guys like Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, Jakub Voracek, guys like Oscar Lindblom are guys that are going to go under the radar, Drew, that a lot of people don't talk about too often. And you've got a guy like Wayne Simmons on the third line. He's an impact player. He'll make a difference in each and every game. And I think coming into this one, it's just not the night where the Florida Panthers get their first win. Philadelphia is far more talented. They're a team that's going to put a lot of pressure on this Panthers defense, and I don't think they'll be able to handle it whatsoever. So go ahead and give me Philadelphia money line here. This one could go over the total as well. I just don't think Florida has what it takes in this one to get their first win on the season. Philadelphia, a far more talented squad.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm recording this right now from Miami, and yeah, the Panthers off to a rough start, like you said, just 2.3 goals on per game. It having to travel up to Philadelphia, just kind of like overall betting wise, McInnis, how much do you bring into like traveling, being the road team in the NHL, say compared to maybe the NFL? Do you think it matters more or less or about the same? How do you bring that into your handicap in the NHL?
That's a great question. I think, Drew, the way I answer this one is realistically, it's different for each team. And I know it might sound weird saying that, but it's very, very true. I mean, we've got a team like the New York Rangers, for example. Right now, Drew, they're a team that struggles at home. They're a team that actually plays a more poor style of hockey when they're in front of their home fans at Madison Square Garden, which you'd think would be ridiculous. You'd think they'd want to play better in front of their home crowd. So, certain teams actually play better on the road, less pressure, more time at practice, more time spent with the teammates, get the chemistry going, stuff like that. But there's certain opportunities and certain times where you can really, really see a line that kind of throws you off, especially with a team that's on a huge road trip. Perfect example right now is the Edmonton Oilers, a team that's on a massive road trip against a lot of tough teams. As that road trip progresses, that's going to be a spot where I'll be looking to fade them quite a bit. So, when you got a spot just like this with Florida and Philadelphia, we're early in the season. I don't really take that into account too much. But when you've got a team maybe on second game of a back-to-back. They're on the road. They played a tough game the night before. That might be a little bit of an impact on the game. But as far as this one goes here, early on in the season, not too much of an impact for me. But like I said, certain teams are different. Certain teams play better at home, on the road. Certain teams like those long road trips. Depends what kind of weather we're getting as far as how long their road trip really is. But to wrap up my statement, I think it's different for each team. But as far as those long road trips, we certainly look for those fade spots.
Good stuff, McInnis. We got game numbers 5, 6 here. Vancouver at Pittsburgh. Looks like this one, I'm guessing this is a high total for the NHL, seeing 6.5. Mostly it's 6s. There's a 5.5 out there on today's board. But this one's 6.5. Looks like a little juice towards the over, too. -115 at all the Chris books. The bookmaker sports books, the American-facing client. And Pittsburgh, a heavy favorite here, seeing -265, -245, so a good one to shop around on Sportsmemo odds right now. But how would you look to bet Vancouver and Pittsburgh as a big favorite here?
This is a game, Drew, that for the most part, you'd look at this one, it should stick off the board as an over game. But again, I'll mention this each week when we're on these podcasts together. The totals are fluctuating so much in the NHL right now, Drew, because goals are being scored at such an alarming rate. 5.5 years ago used to be the base for totals. We didn't even know anything about 6s or 6.5s. Last Saturday, we saw a 7 posted for the first time I've seen. I mean, Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Washington Capitals was literally posted as a 7 as the total. That's really, really high in my eyes. And we're seeing a 6.5 now in this Vancouver versus Pittsburgh game. And when I look at this one, this one screams actually under to me, because we've got a team in the Pittsburgh Penguins right now, Drew, and I think anyone that knows anything about hockey knows this team's been very successful. They have one of the best players in the world, Sidney Crosby. They have Evgeny Malkin. They have Phil Kessel, young guys like Jake Gensel. All these guys that are such impactful players and skilled players that know how to score. But the biggest deal for this team recently has been their defensive woes. And I think tonight they'll prove they can buckle down and play a defensive style of hockey. Meanwhile, this Vancouver Canucks team is kind of in the same boat where they've been struggling defensively, but they're a team that knows how to score. And when I see a 6.5 line or 6.5 posted total, I see Elias Pettersson, or Elias Pettersson as they've been calling him. That's how you pronounce it in Europe. He just got injured for Vancouver. Vancouver has a couple injuries already. They only have a few guys realistically that I can count on to score for them. So I think that both these two teams have to buckle down, have to get some solid goaltending, and I think that'll happen tonight. So when you give me a 6.5, Drew, I got to look under the total between these two teams.
All right, McInnis. Hey, if you like betting the NHL, or if you want to try it out, McInnis is off to a great start here, 36-21 on the year. That's over 60%. We do have a special coupon code for podcast listeners. It's his last name, McInnis, MCINNIS, with the number 7 at the end. That's McInnis 7, and you can get his 7-day all access. So that will include his NFL as well, for just $49. So you get the next 7 days for $49. That's half off using McInnis 7. And for that $50 off, you'll also you can use it for 30-day or 90-day all access as well, and you'll still get the $50 of savings if you want to get a little bit longer. But to try out McInnis, he's making some profits here in the NHL. Obviously knows his stuff, and we'll keep moving down the card here. McInnis 7-8, the rotation numbers. I'll tell you, I like this NHL rotation numbers, just single digits, no craziness with 7-8-4 or anything like that. Just game number 7 and 8, Colorado at the New York Rangers. We got the Avalanche -140, -145 favorites, 6 being the total. What do you got on this one?
Yeah, looking at this one right here, and I think this is a game that's pretty obvious. I think you mentioned Colorado, New York. This is two teams, and this is actually one team, Drew, that I faded last week, and we cashed a bet on them as our best bet on the Friday podcast. We were talking some NFL. We had the Edmonton Oilers over the New York Rangers, and once again, we're getting a line here that's been moving all day long, Drew. It's one of those ones, if you're going to get on it, you better get on it really, really soon. It opened up at -125 for Colorado, and it's getting up there around -144, 145 at a lot of places. So, look, this is a game where, like I mentioned, first of all, New York struggles at home. They got a team coming in right now, Colorado, a road spot for them, but it doesn't matter to me. This is a team that is much more talented, much more fast, and takes care of things at both ends of the ice. And if you listen to me on various outlets and here on these podcasts, this is what I stress the most when I'm talking about NHL handicapping. And a lot of times when people ask me what I look for specifically, it's about teams that not only can score, Drew, but can play defensive style as well. And that's really what I think about this Colorado Avalanche team. They've got guys that are willing to get back check, and take care of things in the defensive end. So when I look at these two teams, I look at New York and I really look at their top line and I say, is Chris Kreider really their best player? This is a guy, Drew, it's on their top line, where in my eyes, I think he should be on a second or third line on a lot of other teams. Now, their center is Mika Zibanejad, who is a guy that's been on this New York team for a long, long time. But there's no way, no how he's a top line center in the National Hockey League, in my eyes. I've mentioned for a long time that I think Henrik Lundqvist is a great goaltender, but he's a guy that's falling off. He's a guy that's mentally weak. He's a guy that hasn't looked good so far this season. And he's not going to do well on a poor team like the Rangers this year. They were so successful for so long, Drew, and he was so great. He's a great goalie in the Olympics, he's a great goalie nationally, great goalie in the NHL, but right now he's kind of falling off my eyes. But the biggest woe for this team and the biggest kind of negative factor of this team is their defense. It's just unbelievable how they get walked all over. And I think guys like Nathan McKinnon and Landeskog are going to just walk all over them. So you got to go ahead and take the Colorado Avalanche money line as fast as you can in this one. The odds are changing by the minute. Everyone's hopping on Colorado, and that doesn't always make you feel comfortable when a lot of people are hopping on this team that you're going for. But this one, I think Rangers don't really stand a chance. Colorado's speed will be no match for this Rangers team. So go ahead, take the Colorado Avalanche on the money line.
I like that. I'm going to put that in as well. Follow you on this Colorado. This is also a client play for you up at sportsmemo.com right now. And guys, remember that coupon code McGinnis7 for $50 off the next 7 days, also 30 and 90 days as well. McGinnis, we got a couple more games here. Yeah, you brought up that Edmonton minus 115 winner you gave out on Friday. I love having you on in talking NFL, and then, guys, we're going to continue to do that on the Friday one, give McGinnis's kind of best bet for the podcast out for the weekend in the NHL as well at the end of the NFL analysis. So as far as the podcast schedule, wanted to throw that out there. Got two more games here, McGinnis. We got game number 9 and 10, Carolina at Tampa Bay. Looks like this one totaled at 6, and Tampa Bay a minus 160, minus 165 home favorite here.
This one's a really interesting game here, Drew, and this one's going to be kind of one, if you're looking for a good one to watch from a fan perspective and just a hockey fan, this is also a great one to watch. These are two teams that are very, very exciting. They really like to push the pace. They're very fast-tempo teams. But not just that, Drew. They're teams that fire the puck from all angles. I believe Carolina had 33 or 34 shots on goal versus Minnesota a couple nights ago in just the end of the second period. Usually, 30 to 34 shots on goal, Drew, is how many a team is getting by the end of the game. This Carolina team ended with 45, 46. They're a lot of shots, and same with Tampa Bay. They've got so many guys that can make dangerous plays on any given night. But the one key thing that you have to look for when you're betting overs is power play percentages. And both these two teams are converting on the power play like it's just nothing, like it's the easiest thing in the world. They're making it look easy early on this season. And when I see that early on, it means a lot to me. It means that these two teams have chemistry. The positions are in the exact right spot, and these players aren't really hesitant to shoot the puck. Both these two teams have a lot of firepower. So, look, we're getting a decent number here. We're getting the 6. I was expecting to see a kind of a 6.5. Go ahead and give me the over in this one. I think this one's going to be a high-paced game, lots of scoring early. Maybe even go ahead and take the over 1.5 in the first period. I've been taking a few of these so far this season, Drew. I've been treading lightly with the first period plays, but with the way teams have been scoring lately, first periods have had a lot of goals as well. So go ahead and give me the over 6 and a small lean to the over 1.5 in the first period as well.
Guys, I almost forgot. We're doing the first ever $2 Tuesday today, so I wanted just to mention it on the podcast. As far as if you go today before 12 o'clock Eastern, there is a 5% top play that we'll have up here for just $2. You can jump on it. Not sure if we're going to do it every Tuesday, trying it out for the first time right now, so see what the response is. Let us know on Twitter as well if you like it. Also, if you like the NHL podcast, feel free to reach out. Sportsmemo on Twitter, or myself at Drew Martin Betts on Twitter, or McInnis. Throw out your Twitter handle there.
Yeah, just at McInnis Picks, MCINNIS Picks. And yeah, same thing for me, Drew. I love talking to people on Twitter, interacting, and let me know what you think. Any questions you want me to answer, any games you want me to discuss, I'm always interested.
Hey, kind of an NHL handicapping question here for you. The Florida teams are the ones I know the most, and I'm in Miami right now, and the Panthers kind of take a back seat. I mean, they take a back seat to the Dolphins, the Hurricanes, the Heat. It's just kind of they're kind of not front page news as much in Miami. As compared to the Tampa Bay Lightning that we just talked about, man, they're front page news over there. They're ahead of the Rays. I'm not sure if it's just the mentality of the people that live there, if there's more people from like the Northeast or Canada or what it is. It's just a way bigger thing in Tampa than it is in Miami as far as NHL goes. Do you think that helps the team or hurts them as far as, or do you bring that into account at all?
I think as far as the Panthers go, to me, Drew, I would personally think it should be a negative thing. I think it should be a rough thing. I'm not going to overthink this. I think it's tough if you look at a Florida Panthers home game sometimes, and it's tough to find 3 or 4 seats in a row that are filled. I think it'd be tough to be a player, be playing at home, and look around and see that. One thing that's often funny to hear as someone that lives on the East Coast of Canada is that a lot of people that are retired or pretty wealthy or doing well and want a vacation, they head out to Florida and they go to those Florida Panthers games with their Toronto Maple Leafs jerseys on, or their Montreal Canadiens or Ottawa Senators or whoever. So a lot of times, you'll look and you'll see a Florida Panthers home game, but you'll see a lot more opposing teams' jerseys in the stands than even just the home team, and that's kind of sad to see. But I think to answer your question, the reason why Tampa Bay is more talked about is they're simply just way better, and they've got the bigger names. They've got guys like Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, and Tyler Johnson. Those guys are just simply way better than any guys that you can really talk about in my eyes, Drew, on the Florida Panthers. But hopefully when the Panthers start to develop over the next couple of years and start making it deeper into playoffs, they will get more fans coming out to their games and being talked about more. But it's interesting hearing you mention that, because that's kind of what we all think here in the East Coast, is that Tampa Bay just kind of overrides that Florida battle.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. It's not. Also, I was just thinking off the top of my head a handicapping angle, and I definitely wouldn't bet this just blindly, but want to throw it off of you. There's a lot of like snowbirds, is what we call them. People from like the Ontario area, and they moved. Yeah. They come down here for like 4 or 5 months. They usually come down in November, so I'm guessing the hockey attendance would be higher November, December, January, pretty much after November. Do you think that could be brought into account as far as home field advantage for the Florida Panthers being a little bit more later in the season rather than right now?
Possibly, yeah. That's what I was referring to. Like the snowbirds, you said, yeah, it's a funny phrase to use, and it's true. A lot of people go out there, but like I said, Drew, whether or not the players or whoever can really see this going on, a lot of those guys that are traveling and they're retired or whatever, they're not actually fans of the Florida Panthers. So they're literally bringing their Montreal Canadiens jerseys or Toronto Maple Leafs, most of the time one of those two teams or whoever, and they're cheering against the Panthers. So I mean, if you're excited to see people sitting in the stands, then it's great. But for most of the time, you don't want to see half the stands being those snowbirds, because realistically they're not cheering for your team. So you want to get some locals in there, because as great as it is to see people sitting in the stands, I don't think those guys are really cheering for the Panthers.
Yeah, well, I mean, that scenario might happen with this next game we're bringing up. It's in Las Vegas. I know Vegas has a lot of transient people maybe rooting for another team. Not sure if that's the case at the same level anyway as the South Florida teams, but we got Buffalo at Vegas, rotation numbers 15 and 16, last game we'll talk about here. Totaled at 6, and it looks like a heavy favorite for the Golden Knights here, minus 190, seeing minus 200. How would you look to bet Buffalo Vegas?
Yeah, as far as this one goes, Drew, I mean, everyone talked about how Vegas was the expansion team last year. They're a team that was playing in their first year. They made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they're off to a pretty disappointing start here, Drew. And I think this is what a lot of people expected. A lot of people thought there would be kind of a fade team to start the season off, strictly because they were so overvalued at the start of the season based off what we saw last year. So looking at this, the way I see it, they have such a smart, skilled goaltender in Marc-Andre Fleury, who was, kind of the leader of the pack last year, Drew, to, set that team in the right direction, for lack of better words. So for me, when I look at this, I see Buffalo, a team that can score, a team that has a lot of developing players. They're a team that will be great, Drew, maybe in 5-6 years down the road. But they're a team right now that is kind of sloppy in their own end as well. So when I see this game, there's 5.5 at certain spots and there's 6s. I would look at the 6 number and go under the total. I said this in Vegas's last game against Philadelphia, and I'll say it again. Vegas won 1-0 in that game, and they have to try and do that kind of stuff again in this one. If they're going to be successful, they have to keep the score low. Right now, guys like Jonathan Marchessault, they're not showing up. They're not putting their name on the scoreboard often enough, and this team has not been exciting enough. Guys like Max Pacioretty that got traded from my beloved Montreal Canadiens haven't done much so far, and this team, their offense has not sparked yet. So when your team is offensively struggling, you know what you have to do. You got to buckle down defensively and play smart hockey that way. So you're giving me a 6 with these two teams. I'll take the under in this one, Drew.
All right, good stuff, McInnis. And guys, remember it's $2 Tuesday, so we got to play up on sportsmemo.com for just $2, top-rated play. And McInnis, remember these. If you're liking what McInnis said on his NHL, obviously doing a good job this year, 36-21 on the year, over 60%. The coupon code is McGinnis7. That's MCINNIS number 7 for $50 off his 7-day all access. Last question here, McGinnis. We got the Maple Leafs up in your neck of the wood. Not sure how far you are. How far are you from Toronto?
Pretty far. About an hour and a half flight, or an hour flight. Pretty East Coast, but that's one of the closest teams to where I live. So it's a team that's talked about a lot around where I live.
Yeah, and they're pretty much at or almost the Stanley Cup favorites. Do you see them going all the way this year, or would you say a take the field bet?
Well, you know what? They opened up as Stanley Cup favorites, and I took a hard look at this and thought, you know what? They had that trade. They got John Tavares. They got all these guys, all these snipers. Are they going to be successful? And here's one thing that I'm still looking at, and I don't care what anybody says, the defense has to be fixed. It's something that has to be dealt with. Whether it means they have to trade one of their special players on offense in order to get a defenseman in return, whether it means they have Freddie Anderson just have an outstanding year and keep things held down as far as goaltending wise, it has to be something like that, because these guys have to buckle down defensively. I got to give my hat off to Austin Matthews, who plays a great two-way game. He's not just an offensive star; he plays defense as well. Guys like Mitch Marner, but ultimately, Drew, the defense isn't enough, and I think these guys are too small as well. Playoff hockey is way different than regular season hockey, and people have to understand that. It's way more rough, and it's way more, you need to have depth across the whole board, and you need to have defense as well. So for right now, I definitely would not be in any hurry to run to the window and take this team as a Stanley Cup future. I can't discredit the fact that they're scoring goals at an abysmal rate right now, making it look easy. I mean, they're averaging like 4 goals a game, 5 goals a game, and making it look ridiculous. But as for right now, Drew, I would hold off. I think as the season progresses, you could get some better odds on them. And right now, I just do not trust their defense. They're a great team. They'll do great in the future. But as for right now, I'm not going to go crazy about this team being a lock to win it all, that's for sure.
All right, good stuff on the NHL, McGinnis. Best of luck this week, and we'll have you back on Friday to talk NFL plus that NHL best bet for the weekend we talked about. And guys, remember McGinnis7 as the coupon code when you're checking out for McGinnis. Best of luck with your bets. We'll be back tomorrow with college football every game on the board podcast.